Just looking out on the day of another dream, where you can't get what you want.
Life is Strange 2 is a 2018 narrative adventure game by Don't Nod Entertainment and Square Enix. It stars Sean and Daniel Diaz, a pair of brothers navigating the US West Coast as they escape from forces hunting them after an accident causes an untimely death. This is the fourth game in the Life is Strange series, but the second main game in, well, the same series. The reason for this is because, of course, Before the Storm was a prequel slash spin-off of Life is Strange 1, and The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit is a sort of prequel slash setup for this one. Both of those games were not like full well, Before the Storm is a full game, but they're meant to be more of like follow-ups or lead-ins rather than main games themselves. And as such, it does make it a little weird that this is, again, that Life is Strange 2 is the fourth game in the series. But it's a really great game with a lot to tell, so why don't we get into it and see what makes this game so special. The story of Life is Strange 2 centers on Sean Diaz, a 16-year-old boy living in Seattle with his 9-year-old brother Daniel and their father Esteban. They are a happy family, getting by, living life, having plans for the future, when tragedy strikes. Their father is unfortunately killed during a unfortunate standoff that happens involving a police officer. And this causes Sean and Daniel to need to go on the run after Daniel's latent superpowers are unveiled. This is an interesting game in the series because the story takes you all over the place. Unlike other games, which are set in kind of like one location with the various, like different parts of that location, like, oh, you're in Arcadia Bay this entire time, but you're in this part of Arcadia Bay, then you're in this part, that part. This one goes a lot further. This takes you to different states, different parts of those states, different settings altogether, and as such, it has a bigger variety of settings for it. The story itself also takes a bunch of different directions that you don't see in the previous games. It allows it to feel more dynamic and large. Because of this, the story kind of goes in a few different directions. You start off with just, running from the law. You go to having to hide out with your grandparents. You meet the characters from The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. You meet some other drifters who are just trying to get by. You work on a pot farm. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in this game, and it mostly centers around the characters, Sean and Daniel, trying to get by, trying to survive, trying to escape, because they're scared. They're kids and they're scared. And that's where a lot of the heart comes from this, with the characters. So let's get into that and talk about all the amazing characters that this game has. There are a lot of characters in Life is Strange 2. Due to the nature of the game going between all these different locations, there's just so much to talk about here, but I'm going to talk about the ones that really stood out to me the most. So obviously you have Sean and Daniel, the main characters of the game. Now you play as Sean. Your point of view perspective is from him, and he's this 16-year-old boy trying to protect his brother, trying to survive, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, as well as dealing with the loss of his father. He's confused, he's scared, he's angry, he's going through all these different emotions. And then on top of it, his brother also has superpowers. So it's really interesting as well that this is a game where you're playing as a character who's not the one with the superpowers, but you're kind of assisting them. Daniel is a 9-year-old kid who doesn't understand what's going on, And as he learns more, he gets more out of control, and while you have to kind of rein him in. Part of the game is you having to figure out which way to lead Daniel. Whether you want him to become kind and generous and helpful and a good person, or if you want to lead him down a path of vengeance, a path of anger, a path of emotion. And choosing which path to kind of lead him down with your choices makes this game very dynamic, but I'll get into that more with the gameplay. We also have other characters. As short of a role as he has in it, Esteban, the kid's father, is a great character. He gives a lot of good motivation for these kids and allows, even after his death, to be a driving force in all of their decisions and their lives. He's really cool. He's really nice. He's funny. He's just a great overall character, and from what we can tell, a great overall father to Sean and Daniel. Especially as a single father working at a garage. He's like doing the best he can for these two kids to give them the lives that he's able to. Now, we also have Brody. Brody is a character who's introduced pretty early on, and he's kind of like this oasis amongst a desert of really terrible shit going on. With all the other pain that the kids are feeling, and with some, racism and stuff thrown their way because Sean and Daniel Diaz are, Mexican American. So, with all of that they have to face, Brody comes as this oasis. He's just this bright spot of goodness in the world. He helps them out. He's an absolute, awesome friend to them. And he ends up being this person who saves their lives in a way. He's such a great character, and probably, from what I've gathered, the most beloved by the fans for this game. He's just super well loved. And for good reason. Now, you also have characters Finn and Cassidy. Finn and Cassidy are two drifters who are going around kind of with this nomadic lifestyle. They do recreational drugs, they're into drinking, they're into music, all that kind of fun stuff. Stuff that's not really that harmful, but is seen as such by a wide amount of society. And Daniel and Sean end up getting involved with them, and it leads to some really interesting decisions and some moral and ethical quandaries about what's the right thing to do in any given circumstance. And there's a lot of arguments that can be made regarding those quandaries. I like them both as characters. I think they're really interesting and have a lot of depth to them. Neither of them feels wholly good, but neither feels wholly bad either. They're nuanced, and they really come across that way. Now, you also have these officers who are chasing them down and have multiple interactions with the boys, and they're mostly what you expect for these kind of characters. There's not too much else to them, but they do play an important role in the story. They're just not the most exciting of characters, to be fair. You also have Claire and Steven. You met Claire in The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. Her husband is Steven, who I think was mentioned in that game. But you meet them more here. They're great. They're fantastic characters. Again, with a good amount of nuance. They're not perfect, but they are great allies and try their best to help out. And again, not trying to spoil everything because there's a lot I could be spoiling with all of this. But speaking of Captain Spirit, you do get to meet Chris and his father again in here, and their role and how they play into it is definitely built upon in the previous game. And their moments in this are deeply impactful to how Sean and Daniel go in accordance to the moral side of things, what side you choose to kind of push Daniel towards. It actually ends out in entirely different ways And I think there's actually more than two ways as well. And it's really interesting. You also have some side characters here and there, like Sean has a friend back at home who he was going to go to a Halloween party with. She's really cool, she's likable, but you don't see too much of her in the game. And then there's various other characters here and there who have a role to play. But outside of the characters, there's a lot more that this game has going for it. So let's move into the gameplay. Life is Strange 2's gameplay is pretty much the same for the most part with the other games, except there's like the big notable difference of paths in this one. Like, don't get me wrong, the first Life is Strange game obviously had a couple different paths you could go down, and that was really exemplified by the ending of the first game, where your path actually changed where the entire story closed out at. And the other games do this to a degree as well, but this game I feel has the most diversity with its endings and has a lot more different paths it can go down based on your choices. And your choices throughout the game, throughout various points in the game, allow you to have like different kind of ratings, I guess you could say, with your morality. Different points with your morality. You could be like really good, you can be mostly good, you can be like kind of neutral, mostly bad, or really bad, and it's like it changes what kind of ending you get. And I really love how that's integrated in here. It makes almost each different playthrough feel very different. And I love that. I love that each playthrough gets to kind of be its own thing, and you get to see these different kind of endings play out in very different ways. But other than that, the gameplay is mostly the same. Being a narrative adventure, you get to move around, interact with people, interact with things in your environment, stuff like that. It's mostly that kind of thing, just with the added exceptional diversity of the choices mattering a lot more. It makes it feel like a lot more impactful because of that. The gameplay is really good though. Like, the formula doesn't need to change all that much because it's like it's already where it needs to be. So no real issues on that not changing too much, but I love what they did with it nonetheless. So, that being said, with the gameplay being this good, how are the visuals? Life is Strange 2 takes a massive step up in the visuals compared to the previous games. Like, all of the previous games look good. They have a certain style to them that this game does carry over with, but the overall visuals, the lighting, just the way nature looks is so much better. And maybe part of that is because you get to see more nature in this. Getting to be out in nature more and getting to explore more different kinds of settings allows you to really experience that in its entirety and allows it to feel that much grander and more exciting, and everything just looks wonderful in that regard. The graphics have upgraded as well. There's better lip sync, there's better just movement. Everything looks a lot better in pretty much every way. The visuals have definitely taken a massive upgrade, and I only hope this continues throughout the rest of the series. So, what about the soundtrack? Like the previous games in this series, Life is Strange 2 has a fantastic soundtrack. Each song fits the tone, the message, the idea, the themes of what's going on at the moment, and really allows the game to just breathe and feel alive in a lot of ways. None of the songs stick out too much except for one, because they got a pretty notable song by a pretty notable band in this game. Unlike the other games, which have used more indie kind of songs, this one actually uses a song by the hit band Gorillaz. It uses their song on Melancholy Hill, which is a fantastic song by the group. If you haven't listened to Gorillaz, I would definitely suggest checking out that song, or suggest checking out more of their music, maybe from the Demon Days album, for example. But On Melancholy Hill is a fantastic song that has this just wonderful tone and feel to it that just fits within this world. It fits within the world of Life is Strange and allows it to just like feel like this emotionally resonant moment very early on in the game. The song plays very early on. But I really enjoy this song being in there because it feels almost grander. Having a bigger band music in here makes the game feel like it's a bigger deal. And with the game's story and characters and settings, as well as gameplay, already helping with that, it really elevates this game even further into a grander level than any of the previous entries have. I really think that's just an underestimated thing that music in a game can do. It can really elevate and expand upon everything else within the game to make it feel even bigger. Music is a powerful thing. Never forget that. But what are my overall final thoughts on this game? Life is Strange 2 is a fantastic game that takes everything from the previous entries and pushes it one step beyond. It just makes everything feel grander, it makes the stakes much higher, it makes the music much better, the visuals, everything is just improved on in such a noticeable way that it just really feels like the right direction for this series. And don't get me wrong, I love the first game, and while I may not be as big a fan of Before the Storm as some people are, I see what people see in it. This is just better. The story is better, the characters are better, there's more nuance, more depth, more intrigue, and I love the diversity of paths that this game can go down. There's so many ways your decisions impact things more than ever before. And this is really like just a showcase of how these games can continue to innovate as they go on. So, yeah, I think this game is fantastic. I think it's really a good step forward for this series. But it's not over yet, because next week we move on to Life is Strange True Colors. In the meantime, tell me your thoughts on Life is Strange 2 down in the comments below, and thank you, as always, so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.